Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we cover all the home teams. We'll talk about the New Orleans Saints and New Orleans Pelicans. We'll talk some college baseball as well. Great panel to break it down, as always. Les East of CrestCitySports.com and so much more. He'll give you the layout on that. And also Chris Hagan of Fox 8 Sports join us tonight on the program. Gentlemen, welcome. Thanks for joining us as always. Les, tell the folks a little bit about what you're involved in and a little bit about how they can follow you. Whole 9 yards. Give it to us.
Thanks, Eric. As you mentioned, I'm writing for CrescentCitySports.com, which allows me to cover all the teams you just mentioned and some others, which is pretty cool. And I cover LSU for SaturdayDownSouth.com, cover the Saints and Pelicans for the SportsExchange.com. Those are the most notable ones. I don't think we have time to run down everything. But I'm on Facebook, and I'm also on Twitter at Les_East.
And always good to have you, Les. Thanks for coming down. Chris, welcome back. World traveler Chris Hagan, back and forth to the West Coast with the Pelicans. Great job, by the way. Really did some really great reports. Welcome back to the show. Tell the folks about all the great things going on at Fox 8.
Well, yeah, we've quickly made that transition from Pelicans postseason, and it's full on Saints, college baseball. Still talking a little bit of Pelicans with upcoming free agency, obviously, but big week, first week of OTAs, got those the next couple weeks, then rookie minicamp in June. So the Final Play app, big app that we do at Fox 8 Sports, you can find all of our Saints coverage, NFL coverage, videos and analysis, a ton of good stuff on that. The Fox 8 News app as well, a lot of Saints content on that, as well as Pelicans. You can follow me at Chris Hagan TV on Twitter, Hagan TV on Instagram, Chris Hagan Fox 8 on Facebook. I'm all over the place and always happy to get your sports take, so be sure to hit me up.
Yeah, you're right. Guys, really great news for the city this week. Super Bowl 58 in 2024 has been awarded to New Orleans, a brand new format this time around. After the city looking like they had, and from everything we heard from the two previous bids, they had the best bids for the last two Super Bowls that we lost. Unfortunately, losing those Super Bowls to Minneapolis and Atlanta because they built new stadiums. This time around, the NFL comes up with a new format where you're not bidding against another city. They invite you in. And, of course, lo and behold, the city is awarded the 2024 Super Bowl. Interesting about that Super Bowl is we'll have to split Mardi Gras once again. We'll have the first week of Mardi Gras in Orleans Parish, and then there'll be a little bit of a hiatus for the Super Bowl celebration, and then we'll come back for the final week of Mardi Gras, which obviously cannot be moved because of Ash Wednesday. The rest of the surrounding parishes will continue to have Mardi Gras as is, but in Orleans, they'll have a little bit of a downtime for the parades. Of course, all that's been worked out. And lo and behold, we have another Super Bowl. It's going to be our 11th tie, the tie for the first, along with Miami, of all NFL cities. And it's been a long time coming, but it's about time. I want to ask you, first of all, about the format. I think that really lends itself more to the opportunity for New Orleans maybe to have some more Super Bowls down the line. And again, it takes away, I guess, that competitive bidding process, especially with a lot of these new stadiums now online and not having to compete with those new stadiums.
Yeah, I think it's good news for New Orleans. If I'm not mistaken, the city was 10 for 10 in bidding for Super Bowls before those last two, which were decided almost exclusively because of the new stadiums in Minneapolis and Atlanta. So I think not having to go through that process will be helpful, since obviously there are no plans to put a new stadium here anytime soon. So I think that's good news for the city, and it makes sense. I think the NFL decided that they didn't like the idea of having losers come out of any particular awarding of a Super Bowl, and there were a lot of hurt feelings when cities tried so hard to get it and then got left out. So I think by picking one place and zeroing in on making it work for that city in that year, I think makes sense for the NFL, and I think it's especially good for New Orleans. I think the way it worked out this year is a good sign that maybe there won't be as big a gaps as we've had the last couple of times.
Right, because we're about the same age, and growing up, I mean, it was like every 3 or 4 years we were getting Super Bowls, and of course with the rewarding of new stadiums in cities that have franchises, once that happened, we've kind of moved to the back burner, even though we're still the best place to hold a major event. So really good news for the city. Your take, Chris, on the awarding of the Super Bowl here in New Orleans.
Yeah, I think it's the best of both worlds. I think the NFL, you talk to a lot of owners, you could talk to a lot of people, players, coaches, whoever in the NFL, and they tell you New Orleans is one of their favorite places to have it for all of the obvious reasons, the culture, the food, the proximity of everything. But part of awarding it to cities with newer NFL stadiums is because they are newer NFL stadiums. And I think when you do that and you make that kind of investment in your team, you deserve to have a chance, even if it is somewhere like a Minnesota that's not necessarily the weather you want to be in for a Super Bowl. So I think it's good that the NFL gets to bring their big game back to New Orleans. They obviously wanted to do that. But I think it's also a good timeline for New Orleans because it gives preparation time. There's obviously things outside of the Superdome that could use a little bit of work. And then the Superdome itself, I mean, there are expected renovations to come. And so it gives, obviously New Orleans isn't going to get a new stadium. So it gives the Superdome a chance, at least a little bit of time to catch up and add on and, have that same sense of a newer stadium feel that they're getting from a lot of the other cities that are being awarded the big game. We
had this discussion before we went on air. I had the discussion on my radio show this week. When you look at this situation, it's more than just the renovation of the dome. Now, the state awarded a contract of $422,000 to Gesner Sports to develop a master plan for Superdome renovations. Those renovations, if they take place, should take place in the off seasons of the Saints 2020 through 2022. Now remember, we have the NCAA College Football Championship in 2020 in the Dome. The NCAA Women's Final Four is 2020 in the arena, and then in this Dome again in 2022 is the NCAA Men's Final Four. There's talk that they may again tinker with the terrace for the first time ever. There's been talk about ground suites that would be on the field level, possibly renovating and making the press box more press friendly. All this is good news for the Dome. Also, as a caveat to that, guys, with the extension of, there's going to be an extension of the Saints lease, which ends, I believe, in 2024, 2025, again, coinciding with that Super Bowl. So you got to figure there's going to be a lease extension that's going to go along with that. And for this time around, from what we understand, the Saints will be putting up money for this renovation. Now, again, we know that the video boards and some of the stuff, the cosmetic stuff that's been done within the last round of renovations were paid for by Tom Benson. The major renovations were paid for by the NFL and the state of Louisiana, as well as FEMA money that came from the aftermath of the largest man-made disaster in the history of this country, aka Hurricane Katrina. So that's fine and dandy, the Dome, and we can talk about that, but we were talking about we've also got to get our act together as a city. We can't have a situation where we have freezing temperatures, where we can't get water to hotels. We can't have a situation where we have rainstorm and we have floods in our streets, or we have a situation where energy hasn't hardened the transmission lines or the electrical grid here, and then we have another blackout and we start losing power. We're losing power almost every single day at some part of New Orleans right now. So from the standpoint of the city, we got to get our act together with the money that's been given us, or get more funds to rebuild our infrastructure. And then, of course, the dome has to be upgraded as well. The good news is we got a few years to get that done before they come back to New Orleans for these big games.
Right, and there's no question that that's important, and there is time to do it, but there's only enough time to do it right, to get started and do it right the first time. This can't drag on. And it's important not only because, we remember the black eye the city got for the power outage during the last Super Bowl that was here, but, Chris mentioned a lot of the reasons why people like to come to New Orleans for the game. And in addition to the restaurants and the culture and everything, it's the proximity of everything. And that takes into account what's really important about any event like that is it's not just the game, it's several days of people being in town and trying to enjoy the city. And if you have infrastructure issues that cause problems at the hotel or the street flooding or whatever it might be, that can damage the experience quite a bit, even if the game itself goes off flawlessly. Yeah. So, as you point out, it's not just the building and the game itself, it's all of the infrastructure around it and how that can impact the experience in the days leading up to the game.
Right. And I would throw in the French Quarter as well, something I've talked about on my radio show. Anybody that's been to the Quarter lately sees the streets are crumbling, the sidewalks are crumbling. Again, when we have rains now, the French Quarter floods for the first time in my lifetime. That's got to be done as well. And of course, the upkeep of historic buildings, that's the cash cow, not just for the city of New Orleans, but for the state of Louisiana. And we've allowed that to crumble before our very eyes. There's a lot of work to do here, Chris.
Yeah, just look at last year. Had the Falcons beaten the Eagles in the divisional round, had the Saints beaten the Vikings, the Saints host the NFC Championship game, and during that week was the week that we had the freeze around here, and the interstates are shut down, roads are shut down, schools and everything are closed. So that wouldn't have been a good situation, and New Orleans narrowly avoided another black eye. I'd like to think that I do believe that after experiencing the disappointment of missing out on Super Bowl bids a couple of times and knowing how much that that hurts local football fans, and you miss out on that economy boost as well, that the city will take advantage of having one landed in the bank for 2024 and making sure that is a flawless experience and as good as it can get. So down the road, it's not another gap. It's another couple of years before the game is back in New Orleans, and especially if it goes off well without a hitch, then that's your biggest competition, or your biggest, I guess, ace in the hole against competing against some of these newer stadiums. The fact that New Orleans can still do it just as good as anybody can with a stadium that's 50 years old.
Yeah, that's been modernized. As much as you can modernize that. And the great thing about that building, when they built that building was built to be modernized. You can keep the shell and basically go in. We've seen that thing, changed over a couple times. And, the vision is now to modernize it even more. And the good thing about it this time is, Les, the Saints, the state, the city, the SMG, and also the Superdome Commission, all on one page on this going forward. We've seen a more adversarial situation between the Saints and the state in the past when it comes to the dome renovations and also extending the lease. It doesn't look like that's the case this time around.
No, and I think the partnership there among all those entities is really important. It makes everything go a lot smoother. And one other thing I want to mention, because we're focusing on the problems with the infrastructure, yes, and rightfully so, but to take the positive side of that coin, we know that if that's taken care of, that the Sports Foundation, the Saints, the city, the volunteers are second to none. Yes. That when it comes to the people involved in pulling off these events, we know New Orleans is going to be A+. So if they can just focus on those issues and get them taken care of, everything else is going to be first class, and it's going to show why New Orleans has always been such a popular destination. So that's another reason why taking care of the outside stuff is so important, because we don't want to detract from what we know is going to be such a great experience, thanks to the people who put it on.
And we're back in the mix again. When you look at all the games that are going to be coming here over the next few years, again, we don't want to mess that up.
Yeah, I think it's no question. It's not just the NFL. It's a number of leagues and people that appreciate what the city of New Orleans can do, and the way that they can put on a big event and really show off the city and show everyone a good time. It's something that the city needs to be around, and I think it's something that all these leagues always want to be a part of.
Yeah, no doubt. Guys, let's switch gears, both of you with OTAs today. I'll start with you first, Chris. Chris, your impressions of what you saw. It's really difficult, when you're looking at OTAs. But, again, maybe some things that you took away from it.
One of the things I took away is, I'm really interested to see how this depth at running back plays out with the absence of Mark Ingram, and he'll be back for the mandatory mini camp in a couple of weeks, and he'll be there for training camp. But then, those first 4 weeks of the season, he can't be in the building, so the Saints do have to take preparations for that. And behind Alvin Kamara, I don't think they're going to put the whole load on Alvin Kamara. I think there are going to be carries for guys like Jonathan Williams or Trey Edmonds, Boston Scott. There are carries to go around, and I think that's going to be an interesting competition to watch. I think I'm really intrigued by Boston Scott. He's got that small frame, but Sean Payton mentioned today he's built really well. He's built to run between the tackles a little bit, despite being a shorter 5'6", 5'7" kind of guy. He's not just a joker back. He's a guy that can do a lot of different things. I think if you play in the Saints offense, you have to realize as a running back you're going to have to catch the ball. That's something Mark Ingram developed and has done really well the last couple of years, and I think that's what guys like Jonathan Williams, Trey Edmonds, I saw him make a nice grab today. They're going to have to add that to their game. So that's going to be something I think I'm going to enjoy watching, how those guys compete behind Alvin Kamara.
Talk about the running back position, because I think that's intriguing because of the situation that happened with Ingram and the way the Saints deal with their salary cap. Everybody's saying they're going to go out and get a veteran. Well, they may go out and get a veteran, but I don't know if they get a veteran that's going to be here week one. If a vested veteran comes in, that contract is paid in full and guaranteed for the entire season. In the past, we've seen the Saints, play a little musical chairs the first week, not wanting to pay a vested veteran and maybe bringing that vested veteran back in the second week. I think Payton is going to give the young players in that backfield every opportunity to get that job. Not that they're afraid to have to pay another veteran, but you got Mark Ingram coming back in 4 weeks after the season starts. You don't want to put an investment into a veteran that's going to be looking for carries that you're going to be paying big money to, if ultimately all that guy is going to be is a glorified backup.
So you don't think Adrian Peterson's coming back?
I don't. I don't think Adrian Peterson's coming back.
I think I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
No, you're right. I think they're going to look to handle that situation internally. I think that's their preference, and that's the way they'll probably be able to do it. I'm also intrigued by Boston Scott to see what he might be able to do. If he was a couple of inches taller, he probably would have been drafted a lot earlier. So, he's a guy who definitely is going to be in the mix there, along with the other guys Chris mentioned, and also Daniel Lasco, who's coming back from the injury last year. But what's interesting about it is normally you would say the third halfback would make the team almost exclusively on special teams. But this year, for a couple of reasons. One, somebody's going to have to help take up the slack created by Mark Ingram's absence those first 4 weeks. So running the ball and catching the ball is going to be a big factor for whoever the third person is. But also, Kamara and Ingram line up so much as wideouts that they're not playing halfback a lot of the time when they're on the field. So there are carries there even when Ingram comes back. So I think there's a role for a third halfback to be a part of this offense, not only for those first 4 weeks, although that'll be the busiest time for them. So I think they're going to look at those young guys, and unless they become convinced during the preseason that the answer is not there, I think that's the way they want to go.
And I don't want to downplay the loss of Mark Ingram here, but one of the big things outside of the run, his running skills, his ability to catch the ball, is his ability to block for Drew Brees as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation, because we've talked about how the Saints can make up for it at the running back position alone. Let's not forget, and though they weren't successful with it prior to last year, this is a team with Drew Brees that can really air the ball out, and I think we saw the most successful version of the Saints right now is going to be as a team that's run first like they were last season. They can lean on Drew Brees a little bit more. You still got a Hall of Famer back there that, should you go that way, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. And I think the earlier part of the schedule is where you can get away with not being 100% with what you want to do with your offense. So it's going to be interesting to see how they make up for what Mark Ingram did, whether you lean on Breeze a little more, whether Alvin Kamara is running between the tackles a little bit more, whether or not a guy like Trey Edmonds, who showed a little bit of burst, and capable guys like Jonathan Williams in the development of Boston Scott. It's going to be an interesting problem to attack.
Yeah. Guys, any rookies kind of stood out to you today? I know, again, it's hard when they're in T-shirts, shorts, and helmets, but anything, any guy that maybe just kind of stuck out to you?
Yeah, it's hard to say based on the limited viewing today, but I would say generally speaking, I think after Marcus Davenport, the guy everybody's keeping an eye on is Traquan Smith, the wide receiver, that he's a guy who has a chance to really have an impact on this team. I think the two defensive backs are guys that are interesting, that they have some versatility back there, and the Saints, like a lot of teams in the NFL now, tend to play their safeties almost like linebackers to some degree, so that you need to have extra guys in the secondary. So I think that's an area they'll be looking at as well. But based on today, I don't think anything really caught my eye. I don't know about you, Chris.
Yeah, it's harder than not in paths, but I'll say Cameron Moore pulled in a nice interception once they moved the practice indoors. It was a JT Barrett pass that kind of wobbled over the middle a little bit, and Moore, I think he was roaming the middle a little bit, stepped up and made a nice play. So that's what you want. You want competition back there at defensive back. They've certainly gotten a lot deeper there when you draft a couple of guys. You bring back Patrick Robinson, who he made a nice play today. It was after Breeze technically would have been sacked on the play, but he just threw it long anyway, put it in the back of the end zone from about 35 yards out. And Patrick Robinson got under the ball. He was probably about the 10-yard line and just turned on the gas. Breeze probably thought he was throwing it out of the back of the end zone, and Robinson went and made a nice snag over the shoulder. That kind of caught my eye because he still looks young, as Peyton says. He's still got some spring, and he's got a lot more confidence than the last time he was here. So just another big boost to that secondary that I think they've built there. They obviously built at linebacker with Demario Davis. They obviously went after building the defensive line, re-signing Okafor and drafting Davenport. So it's a defense that's had a lot of money and had a lot of investment put into it when you talk about trading up 13 spots. So that's a unit that everybody's going to keep their eye on, and that's kind of what's catching my eye right now.
Everybody asked me about JT Barrett. What can you guys talk about JT Barrett? How about the accuracy, poise? Any impressions of JT Barrett today?
Well, I think he's a guy you can see. He has been the starting quarterback in big games. I mean, he just has that body language. Mm-hmm. You can see in the huddle, getting out of the huddle, getting the team lined up. He has that confidence. You can see he's a leader. He has the qualities you want to see in a quarterback. It's a little hard to say at this point about accuracy. I don't think that would be his biggest strength at this point, but he's not going to be your starting quarterback when you play Tampa Bay in September.
Let's hope not.
Yeah. So that's not really an issue. But I'm saying that's the first thing you can see is he's built for the part. Now, it's going to be down the road before he plays in the NFL if he does. But that's the first thing that struck me is you look at this guy and say, okay, this guy has led a team to success at a high level previously.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, from a competition standpoint, if I'm lining him up with some of the other guys, he's got to prove that he can be accurate with the football and deliver it. And he's, like Les mentioned, he's got the poise. I think he's got the leadership. But Taysom Hill might be the most athletic out of the bunch. And Peyton raved about what he can do when the play breaks down. Taysom Hill also made a couple of nice throws. He had a nice post, I believe, to Trayvon Durrell. He found another wide receiver and a deep ball down the sideline. So he's a guy that I'm keeping an eye on, obviously, because if the Saints really believe that he's the future at quarterback, he's got to start showing it because they don't have a first-round pick next year. And I feel like we have this conversation every year with how long is Breeze going to play, but this is a thing now. I mean, it's Taysom Hill in his second year with the Saints and trying to prove what he can do, and JT Barrett, a rookie, and Tom Savage there for insurance. And so, Barrett has some growing to do, certainly, but he's got, I think mentally, he's got what it takes to at least be a leader. It's just a matter of getting the plays down, getting in the playbook, learning his teammates, and being more confident with what to do.
Well,
I was just going to say, if nothing else, I think Hill and Barrett are going to make the second half of the preseason games fun to watch.
Which is much better because we have to sit there and watch them.
Yeah.
Yes.
They get tough to watch.
That'll be
do.
entertaining.
Yes, we have to. Unlike some we have to sit there and watch every second of it. Guys, as we close on the Saints, again, a lot of competition right now. That's good for the team. Any particular position that, as we get into minicamp, you guys are going to be focusing on?
I think linebacker. I think that was a position last year that had a lot of new pieces, a lot of versatile guys who were being moved around in different areas. Had a lot of injuries last year. They brought in Demario Davis, who Chris mentioned, and I spent some time talking to him in the locker room today. He's a very impressive guy, very well-spoken, very knowledgeable about football, and very forthcoming with his knowledge. So he was very impressive. And, Mike Nolan was saying how they have 5 or 6 guys who are all capable of having that communication in the helmet, where they're the guy who basically runs the defense. So they have a lot of versatility, a lot of intelligence in that unit, and there's probably going to be some difficult cuts at that position eventually. So right now, to see how all of those versatile players fit into the scheme, I think is going to be really interesting to watch.
Chris?
Yeah, I would say on the defensive side of the ball, I'm going to be watching defensive end. I think it's a crucial role in what the Saints feel like is the missing piece. That's why you got Marcus Davenport. But I also, Trey Hendrickson spent a fair amount of time injured last year, but he also showed some flashes, some nice plays against the Bucs, Bears, Bills last year, had a couple sacks. He's a guy with a high motor, and one of the things he mentioned talking to him earlier this week was that when you're a rookie and you're coming into OTAs and even your first year, you don't know how many games you're going to play in the NFL. You're playing a lot more games. You're playing a lot more physical football. And then you've also come off of a spring where you didn't really get any rest. You've been doing team workouts and training for the combine and training for your pro day. Like you didn't have an off season because as soon as you're drafted, you got rookie minicamp, OTAs, a couple weeks, and then training camp. So you just played football for a year. That's tough on rookies. So he said one of the biggest things was just the off season, getting that rest, still training and knowing how to take care of your body and prepare it for what is a 6-month grind from July, and if you're a playoff team, into mid-January and February. So him there, Al-Qadim Muhammad, Holy Kakaha's got an uphill battle. Alex Okafor, who Coach Payton says is making real progress there. There are a lot of guys at the defensive end spot that are going to be competing. I'd like to think iron sharpens iron, and with Davenport there being the physical specimen he is, they're going to have fresh bodies, and it looks like it's going to be a good competition. I'm excited about what they can do there because that could be the missing piece. It doesn't take long, and the NFL is a year where, like we saw last year, with a good draft and getting some guys who are outstanding rookies, Ramczyk, Kamara, Lattimore, what they can do for a team and what these additions and signings and guys in year 2 that have a faster learning curve, what they can do, all of a sudden you can have a team that went from an okay, decent pass rush to a good to great pass rush. It's early to determine that, but the potential's there, I think.
Well, and again, we'd like to get back to the time when this team was one of the better teams in the NFL, when they were cutting players and other teams were scrambling to get those players. There was a little bit of a void there for a while when the Saints would cut someone. It was like the old days. They were done. They were moving on out of football. Looks like they've acquired enough talent now that there's going to be some really tough cuts at almost every position on the field. So that's a good thing for the Saints. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Our guest tonight, Chris Hagan of Fox 8 Sports, and also Les East of CrescentCitySports.com. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We'll be right back, talk a little LSU. We'll also talk a little bit about what's going on with the Pelicans, talk some college baseball. Don't go anywhere.
Conditioning, heating, and refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhardt has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Amco Fence, locally owned and operated since 1976. Fully licensed and insured and a member of the BBB, Amco serves both residential and commercial customers. If you're looking to repair, replace, or install a fence for security or aesthetic reasons, Amco Fence supplies wooden, metal, chain link, vinyl, and ornamental or automatic gates. Amco aims to satisfy your fencing needs. Amco Fence, 504-468-9559 or amcofencecompany.com.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Tonight, Les East of CrescentCitySports.com and Chris Hagan of Fox 8 Sports are on our panel. Guys, let's shift gears. Let's talk a little college baseball. Right now, it looks like after LSU's win in the play-in game for the SEC tournament, some are saying that they have a real shot at getting into a regional. They lost to Florida. They're in the middle of a double elimination game as we're on the air right now against South Carolina. Les, I'll take you first. LSU in this tournament now, in the regional tournament? We know they're not going to host, but have they done enough to get in?
I think they probably have. When you're in their position, it's a little hard to project that until you see how all the tournaments play out and if anybody's going to steal some automatic bids. But I don't think LSU's sitting right there at the last spot. I think they've played themselves into a little bit of a cushion so that even if there are a couple of upsets in conference tournaments and teams that wouldn't otherwise get in steal automatic bids, I think they can probably still get in. I think when the committee sits down, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, they are affected, and rightfully so, by a program's track record. And the success LSU has over the years, I think if it comes down to them and another program, they're going to look at what LSU's accomplished over the years and say, this is a program that usually shows it's deserving of the opportunity we give it. So I think for all those reasons, they're in pretty good shape. But when you've had the type of season they've had, there are going to be a few butterflies on the selection day,
yes.
Unless they make a deep run here over the rest of the tournament. But I think they're probably in pretty good shape.
Was the win against Mississippi State enough, or do they need to beat South Carolina and go beyond, in your opinion?
I think the win was enough because I think when it comes down to as close as LSU is and being on the bubble like that, part of it's the eye test. And if the season ended with the way they got beat down against Auburn in Auburn on Saturday, that wasn't a tournament team. That's why they had to beat Mississippi State. The way that they fought and they scrapped literally like manufacturing runs against Mississippi State, sack flies and infield singles or however they could score, they would do it. And they've done it the last couple of days. They look good against Mississippi State. Then against Florida, they showed a lot of fight in yesterday's game, and again against South Carolina today, who's one of the hottest teams in college baseball right now. They've proven that they're a team that can at least hang with some of the best in the SEC. Which, if you're some of the best in the SEC, you're some of the best in the country. So I think that they've proven that. I mean, if you're the NCAA, not only do you go with the history, you go with the fact that it's fun to see an upset. I think LSU is a team that, even if they don't win a regional, they're going to make somebody sweat in one. They're a team that they've had nights where they've looked like LSU and a team that's really polished with some veterans, and then they've had nights where they look like they really didn't belong in the tournament. But at the end of the day, I think 15 wins in the SEC and one tournament win, maybe certainly two would get them in. I think they've proven that they can be in there and at least be a team people want to watch. People want to watch LSU baseball. It's synonymous with college baseball.
You know, guys, unfortunately this year, a little bit down year for baseball here in the state, which again, we've been so spoiled with great baseball for as long as I can remember, not just with LSU, but with Tulane, UNO, Southeastern. I mean, you go right down the line, ULL, I mean, whatever university you want to throw out there. This year a little bit different because it is a little bit down. Honestly, the teams that are vying for regional spots now probably have to win their tournament to be able to get in.
Yeah, I think LSU is probably the only one that has a realistic chance of getting an at-large bid. And as you mentioned, that's not something we've been used to. We've gotten spoiled around here. You know, for quite a while now in basketball, we've kind of gotten used to having slim pickings when it comes to tournament time. But baseball's been the opposite. You know, it's really been fun to watch all the teams that have had success getting there, but stuff like that's going to run in cycles. You're not going to stay all the way up or all the way down for an extended period of time. And this year, as a lot of programs have fallen off a bit, and it's unfortunate because it's so much fun to watch multiple Louisiana schools into the tournament, and we're not going to be able to see that this year unless somebody's able to get an automatic bid to go with what we think could be an at-large bid for LSU.
It's close. I mean, I believe D1 baseball's last 4 in or last 4 or 5 in and last 4 or 5 out on Tuesday had LSU as one of the last 4 or 5 in, but then in that last out list were both UL Lafayette and Louisiana Tech. It's close. I mean, they're teams that are on the bubble right there. I think I saw Texas lost in the Big 12 tournament, so there could be a bid stolen there. It's going to be tougher for those teams, but it's been close all around like that all year. I think Southeastern's a team, they're looking pretty good in the Southland Conference tournament right now. I think they have to win that to get in, but it helped. You know, UNO did them a favor by taking one off of Sam Houston State and making it a little bit tougher on them. And so Southeastern stands a chance there, and I think Southeastern's a team that if they got in the tournament, they could make some noise. They didn't do themselves any favors. Early in the year, they had a chance to beat UConn, who is a top 25 team in a series. They couldn't close games. They couldn't close a number of games against good opponents this year, and it really hurt them. I mean, they really played 7 or 8 innings of good baseball and then blew a couple saves. They dropped 2 games to Jackson State in midweek inexplicably, but then they beat Sam Houston State, and they've looked good against some good opponents. They've beaten LSU. They're a team that can hang. They've proven they're postseason worthy of at-large bids. So I just hope that they can get in to prove that. It's unfortunate they have to win a tournament to do so, but they're a team, I think, that all of a automatic qualifier that usually doesn't make a lot of noise. Those teams usually don't make a ton of noise. They could. Yeah,
and unlike LSU, who really doesn't have a deep pitching staff, Southeastern does.
They do, and they've proven it. I mean, that's how they've won games. That's how they've beaten good teams. They've got quality starters and quality arms, and that's the biggest thing when you get in a regional. Can you close that regional out? Do you have your ace that can pitch in that Saturday night game and win? Or if you're a 3 seed or a 2 seed, maybe throw them right out of the gate. But you got to have the arms to be able to last. And Southeastern finally might have that. It just depends on where they get placed. They're not going to be Alec Box this year. Who knows where they go around the South? But maybe they end up in a more favorable situation. I think not seeing purple and gold for once could do them some favors.
No doubt. Guys, let's switch to college football. We'll talk Tulane first. Good news for Tulane, in my opinion. Good news for Coach Willie Fritz. He gets an extension. They got robbed last year. They should have had a chance to go to a bowl game. There's no, I'm telling you, man. You got to look at that. I've looked at that play over and over again. There's just no way that was not a score. With that said, you could see the change in this program, and Willie Fritz rewarded because of it.
Yeah, and deservedly so. The progress over these last couple of years has been significant, and there's no reason to think it's not going to continue. It would have been nice if the officials had their eyes open and seen Jonathan Banks score that touchdown, and they would have been 6-6. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't know that matters a whole lot. The point is that they showed progress last year. And they're headed in the right direction. You look at Willie Fritz's track record as a head coach. One of his specialties has been rebuilding or building programs, and you've seen steady improvement from year to year. You've seen that since he got to Tulane. There's reason to be optimistic that it's going to continue this year, and they will be bowl eligible. So I think he's been everything they would have hoped for thus far when they hired him, and so the extension made perfect sense. And he's a guy I think who would be happy to set down roots here, maybe even finish his career here. And so Tulane, I think, is smart to give him the security necessary to continue what he's done up to this point.
And can build off that recruiting class that he brought in last year as well.
Yeah, certainly. I think that recruiting class is a result of what we saw over the end of that season. You know, it's not a lot of times on paper that you see a coach with a losing record at a school get extended like that. But if you think that, then you weren't watching Tulane throughout the course of last year. 2 years in a row now, they've gotten to a point where I think they were 3-2 the last 2 years, and then some things don't go their way. And you know, last year we saw a couple of bad losses in there to Florida International and whatnot that really kind of threw them off that bowl game track. But look at the Houston game when they beat Houston at Ullman. Look at, if you told me they had to go to SMU and keep pace with that offense and score 30 or 40 points to be in the game, and a game they should have won, I wouldn't have believed it, you know, 4 or 5 games in the season, even when they had a winning record. But the way that offense is playing, and the fact that they get Jonathan Banks back, the fact that they get Teron Clade back, the fact that you know, they've got more of a vision on offense, I think that vision finally clicked with them last year. Banks became a lot more confident. He played through some injury early. We see what a healthy guy can do. He made some big throws in some big games. That's a team that they're on the rise. And like you mentioned, with that recruiting class, they're going to be relying on some freshmen, especially on that defense, to come in and be able to play right away. But I think, like you mentioned, look, Fritz has a track record of rebuilding programs. Tulane's a more difficult challenge because of the academic requirements to get in that school and filling out that roster with quality players. But he's doing it. And I think they're a team to watch in the American Conference next year.
My tongue firmly in cheek here. The savior has arrived at LSU. Joe Burrow, graduate transfer from Ohio State with 2 years left, has chosen LSU. Quarterback comes in, going to compete obviously with Miles Brennan, Lowell Narcisse, and McMillan for the starting job. About 35% of the offense is what we understand of Ensminger's new offense is in, so he can't be that far behind. I guess the first question is, you guys buying into Joe Burrow walking in and getting the starting job? I got to believe he's going to compete for it. And, you know, I like what Miles Brennan's dad, Owen Brennan, had to say this week, that Brennan's, you know, not going anywhere, that he's going to sit there and he's going to compete. You know, I hope the same would be for McMillan and Narcisse, that they won't, you know, head to another university, and that we'll see a real competition here. What's your impressions of what has happened now with Burrow coming to town?
Well, a couple of things. One, it tells me that the LSU coaching staff probably is not as happy with the 3 quarterbacks they have as they had hoped to have been at this point. Also, I think Burrow did his homework. There was a lot of speculation he would go to Cincinnati because of the coaching connection there, and also because he probably would have a good chance to play right away there. He must have gotten some indication that it's wide open at LSU and he can come in and win that job if he competes. So it tells me that LSU is looking for better play there, and he knows that, and he's ready to come in and compete for it. So I think that's going to be real interesting. I think that was great what Brennan's dad said, but I think it may be different with Justin McMillan, who's due to graduate, I believe, in July, so he could be eligible right away if he transfers. So it wouldn't be surprising at all if he were to transfer out during the summer. But it just adds intrigue to what was already intriguing. It's going to be at least a 3-man competition, maybe 4 if McMillan sticks around, and there's no telling who's going to win it. It's going to be a different type of offense. You're going to have a lot of highly touted receivers, although not a lot of experience there. So I think you're going to see a different type of offense there. It's going to lean on the quarterback's ability to throw more than they have recently. Now we got to find out which of these guys, if any of them, is up to the challenge.
What can you add, Chris?
Yeah, for LSU to be right on Joe Burrow the second he's ready to transfer. It tells you a lot, It tells you, what Les said, that they're probably not as happy as they wanted to be with their quarterback situation. I mean, you can't tell me that wasn't Miles Brennan's job to lose. I know they said the quarterback competition was wide open, but him getting the playing time last year, just little tidbits of what Ed Ogeron said in interviews here and there about Miles Brennan being his championship quarterback, and him, look, either he doesn't think Miles is ready and he wants to protect him and get him another quarterback in there until he's ready, or maybe he's just not ready yet. And there's some doubts there. I don't know if that's the case, but they wanted to get Burrow in, and he'd mentioned, as far back as signing day 2, that they were going to keep a spot open for a grad transfer quarterback. So I guess it doesn't help to have that, or it doesn't hurt to have that competition in there. But this is the game. I mean, in college football, you can't go out and sign guys. This is the closest you can get to being able to sign a free agent.
Yes.
And who's not going to want to bring in more talent, and that's what they've done. It's just a matter of, like you mentioned, getting the ball to these playmakers. LSU's always got playmakers. They're always going to be able to recruit. They've done remarkably well for not having any kind of passing game for years. They've done remarkably well recruiting wide receivers. You just got to put the ball in their hands.
Yes.
And if Burrow can do that, if Brennan can do that, whoever can do that should get the job.
And guys, I mean, every year you're recruiting players. So you're recruiting young players who are coming in who believe they have the opportunity to come in and start immediately. I don't want my quarterback turning tail and running because there's competition. Just because you show up as an All-American coming out of high school, maybe one of the top players coming out of that class, doesn't mean there's not going to be a guy one class or two classes behind you that won't be just as good. So, I think it'll tell a lot about these quarterbacks and the type of individuals they are when the competition starts up, whether you're going to move on to another university and take the easy route, or you're going to go in there and you're going to try to stick around and see if you can match what is out there in terms of the competition for that position.
Yeah, especially at that position, the quarterback position, you want somebody who doesn't shy away from or even welcomes or embraces competition, and who will take that competition, whatever form it takes, and use it to make themselves better, because they're going to have to hold off other good players to have that position. And Burrow knows a lot about competition coming from Ohio State. Sure. And one thing is, a lot of people look at him and say, well, he never really won the job at Ohio State. But you had a guy there in J.T. Barrett who had proven himself early on in his career, and Burrow was neck and neck for the number 2 job when he broke his hand 2 years ago. And so he lost that competition to be the number 2 guy because of injury. And so I don't know that he was ever beaten out by a peer, okay? He was there to back up J.T. Barrett, and he was right there as a guy until he got hurt. So, I think there may be a misconception that he didn't compete as well as at Ohio State as he actually did. So, but competition should make all of them better. They all have skills, and they all have a lot of eligibility in front of them. So, let the best man win, and I think LSU should be. It's going to be fun to watch. Let's put it that way.
You definitely got to feel better about it now that you brought in another arm.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something you see everywhere, but when you look at a couple programs, ones that stand out, Alabama with Jalen Hurts and Tua, Georgia, hey, these are 2 national championship teams with Eason and Fromm. These are quarterbacks that competed against each other, and you got to believe made each other better. And it's taken a lot of times both of them to get to a point where you're competing for championships. Look, injuries happen, things happen. The possibility is there for Brennan, for Burrow, for, I think Narcisse would be a guy that, the specimen he is athletically should be on the field. And then, McMillan, if he's as good as he's looked, and as we've heard in scrimmages and in competition and seen in the spring game, I think he transfers personally. But the competition should only make them better, and to have more guys can only do LSU good, but they've got to find a quarterback. If you can't find one now, when?
Yeah, no, I agree. Let's shift gears to the Pelicans. really now in the offseason, some accolades coming toward some of the players. Anthony Davis, first team All-NBA. Anthony Davis and Drew Holiday, first team All-Defense, and both players deserving of those honors. But the big question going forward, I'll take you first, Chris, is what to do with Boogie Cousins. Now, reports this week that Dallas is going to go after him heavy. The Pelicans can pay him more than anyone else. He goes on social media and shows a video of him shooting jumpers. Does an interview with Mark J. Spears of The Undefeated last week, talking about the free agent process, talking about his rehab, talking about how he's not lost any real size in his ruptured Achilles tendon in that particular leg, and he feels like he's going to be back for training camp. Chris, the Pelicans are in a tough spot here. On one hand, you'd love to have him back. On the other hand, you don't want to invest in a player that comes off a horrific injury like that, especially a big man. What do you think happens here?
Well, hearing Coach Gentry talk and hearing Dell Demps talk, if they truthfully believe it, I think they do. They have faith in Boogie that he can come back. Now, in that interview with The Undefeated, the things that stood out that DeMarcus Cousins said were his ideal free agent destination. He wants to be somewhere he is appreciated and somewhere that's a contender. I think in terms of being a contender, if you're lining up New Orleans and Dallas, you got to go with New Orleans. Appreciation can be interpreted in a number of ways. Is it financially appreciated?
Right.
Because Dallas may offer more money than New Orleans, but New Orleans can offer the most. Or is it the appreciation of your teammates? He's obviously built a bond with Anthony Davis. He's built a bond with Rajon Rondo if they can bring Rondo back, which maybe you can't bring them both back because Rondo's going to need more money. But he's built a chemistry with this team, and they've raved about him in the offseason. They raved about him during the postseason. They obviously loved having him on the sideline in that Portland series. And so there's something built in New Orleans. There's something established. And maybe he doesn't want to go somewhere where it's going to be brand new again. You're going to have to build that chemistry and go somewhere like Dallas, where Dallas is going to have to bring in DeMarcus and I believe another big player if they really want to make an impact. I don't think DeMarcus and Harrison Barnes would be the answer. And so it is a tough spot. The Pelicans have harped on moving forward, building on what they did last year. I think you can do that with Boogie. I think if you don't do it with Boogie, you have to go after another big player. But it's tough. It's tough when you're talking about the kind of money that he could demand on the free agent market. And if it's max, I don't think you do it.
It doesn't sound to me like he wants to take less than the max. It'll be interesting to see what offers are out there. But what's your take?
Well, I think the injury I think he was in a position of strength before the injury in a negotiating sense, and the injury put the Pelicans in the strong position. I don't think he wants to take anything less than he can get from the Pelicans because he already lost the max deal he could have had in Sacramento when he got traded. So I think he wants to get max deal if he can. It's complicated for the Pelicans, but I think they're in a good position because the worst case scenario is he leaves as a free agent and they get nothing in return. And so all they have left is the team that made it to the Western Conference semifinals without him and played better without him than they played with him.
And lots of money.
Yeah, and lots of money. So it's complicated because the injury, it's a bad injury. It's especially bad for a big guy carrying 300-plus pounds on his feet. A lot of money involved. But the complication is, as good a player as he doesn't fit the style that they play best as well as Mirotic did when he came in.
But they won't admit that. That's the thing that really gets me about, and I understand a lot of times what they're saying behind closed doors isn't what they're saying publicly. Right. But almost to a man, they don't buy into that publicly.
Right. Well, you don't, and Alvin Gentry's right, you don't want to dismiss 26 points and 13 rebounds a game.
Agreed.
But how it fits into the grand scheme of things is another matter. And the best case scenario is a sign and trade, where you move him, you save that money, and you bring in some assets. Right. So, yeah, you want to talk him up as much as possible. Yeah, he's going to recover from this. Yeah, he's a great player. Yeah, we want him back. to try and convince teams that they have to sweeten the pot in a potential sign and trade. So I can understand it from that point of view. But, when I look at what he would cost to bring back, the way they played without him, the injury, I just don't see how it makes sense for them to bring him back. As good a player as he is, I respect him, I like him. He did a great job when he was there. I just think whether they can do a sign and trade or if they have to go through the free agent route, I just think the money that, the team they had at the end of the season is the best team they've had in a long time. Maybe in 10 years,
right,
since they lost to the
Chandler,
Spurs.
Paul, and West.
Right. And I just think bringing him back as good as he is just kind of complicates that and kind of gets in the way of the way that they play and the way they can build. I just think it makes more sense for them to move on from him, wish him well, and hope he has great success wherever he goes.
The shame of it all is that we didn't get to see DeMarcus Cousins against the Warriors. We saw him, the last time we saw him on the floor, they beat Boston in Boston, and they beat the Rockets at home. Yes. Now, granted, that's the regular season. But look, the Rockets were playing hard in the regular season. The Warriors were not, but the Rockets were playing playoff basketball type of basketball in the regular season. And so I think that's a significant win. Here's the catch-22 with Boogie to me is that while they weren't playing at the same pace they were in the playoffs, they were still playing at a quick pace. And Boogie was keeping up with that. Now, because he was keeping up with that fast pace the Pelicans were playing and his size, did that contribute to his injury? I mean, the guy's putting a lot of minutes. He and Anthony Davis and Drew Holiday played some of the most minutes in the season. The pace and the minutes that he was putting on that leg, is that why he got hurt?
And he never had a real offseason. Remember, He lost all that weight.
And if so, if you do bring him back, like Les mentioned, even if they can play somewhat at that pace, are you setting yourself up for, another issue? It's a tough call to make. I just wish we could have had some idea of how this team matches up with, the Warriors. Because look, the Warriors can't play the Pelicans like they did. You can't play that Death 5, Hampton 5 lineup if Boogie's on the floor. But we never got an opportunity to see that. And like Les mentioned, it's the best team they've had in a while, that team, but that best still couldn't hold the flame to the Warriors. And so if you want to take that next step, it's tough because we don't know if it's with Boogie or not.
And the other question is, how would they have matched up with Golden State if he had been there? But would they have ever gotten there with him? I don't know that they get into the playoffs. They had a 10-game winning streak after he got hurt. They won the last 5 when any one of those losses might have knocked him out with tiebreakers. So we don't even know if they would have gotten into the playoffs with him as well as they were playing at the time he got hurt. There's just a lot of uncertainty there, and Dell Demps is going to earn his money this offseason.
It is a very, very difficult decision on the part of the Pelicans going forward because you're mortgaging the future, literally mortgaging the future, no doubt about it. Les East of CrescentCitySports.com, Chris Hagan of Fox 8 Sports, thanks for being on our panel tonight. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE at 10 p.m. Also on Pelican Sports Television, that's statewide, 9 o'clock every Friday night. Catch me on the radio, Sports 1280, 101.1 FM HD2, and the iHeartRadio app. Great way to catch the show. That's noon to 2 weekdays. Also, you can listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com. Catch out all the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports at ericasher.com as well. Special thanks to our guest tonight, Chris Hagan, and also Les East. Also special thanks to our friends here at WLE, our great production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, also Naila Jones, Tommy O'Connor, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com.